Hello, in this video I'll be showing you how I made this custom cheese board using Pyrography. I used my Cricut machine to draw the different shapes that I ultimately wanted to burn onto the cheese board. I grabbed a bunch of free images from a royalty-free website and loaded those into my computer editing software so that I could work with the designs and turn it into the shape that I wanted. Check out some of the videos linked below if you're interested in seeing how I work in Pixelmator editor and in Cricut Design Space. I originally tried to cut the design on the Cricut rather than trace it with a marker. However, I quickly found out that the images I wanted to make were just too small and fine to cut well with the blade. So this is why I switched over to using the marker. And then after I have all of these traced out, I'm actually going to transfer this using carbon paper. I created a paper copy of the cheese board to scale, and this is what I used for the first time that I was transferring the markings using the carbon paper. I did this to make sure that the spacing between the different elements on the cheese board would look good when they're all lined up together. I'm actually really glad that I did take the time to put this onto a paper copy first, because I did end up making some adjustments to the layout, and then I didn't have to erase any pencil marks off of my wood version. To use the carbon paper or transfer paper, I lifted up one section of the top white paper at a time, and I slid the carbon paper underneath that. I made sure to have the shiny side face down so that the carbon transferred correctly, and if you're not sure which side needs to be face down, then you can just check it quickly on a piece of paper off to the side. Then I used the tip of a mechanical pencil that had the lead retracted and just followed the lines that had been placed on by the Cricut. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to transfer the carbon onto the bottom piece of paper, but if you're not sure if it's tracing well, you can always lift the top pieces of paper up and make sure the lines underneath are visible. Once I had everything traced, I hung it up on a wall and looked at it from a couple feet back. I think it's always nice to look at something that you're working on from a couple feet away because that's the distance that you'll most often be viewing it from once it's completed. Then I made a couple edits to the spacing and to the size of some of the grapes or leaves, and I reprinted everything on the Cricut and cut it out again. Once I had all the pieces cut out, I measured them very carefully and taped them into place. Then I did the exact same process for transferring using the carbon paper as I did when I was tracing directly onto printer paper. I do notice that the pencil markings don't show up quite as bold when I'm drawing onto wood as they do when I'm drawing onto paper. So I'm very careful to balance to make sure that I'm pressing hard enough that I can see the carbon lines, but not so hard that I'm leaving a pencil indentation in the wood underneath. It's almost time to start burning with the pyrography tool, but the last step that I do is sand the top of the wood. Normally I do this after I turn on my pyrography tool so it can start heating up. I sand the top using a relatively fine grit, normally about 220. This is just to remove any of the burrs that might be on the top of the wood because those will burn unevenly with the pyrography tool, and additionally it gives a really nice clean look to the finished product. Whenever I start burning with a pyrography tool, I always start with the heat set to medium. This is a best practice to make sure that I don't burn the wood the first time I touch it with the tool, just until I learn exactly how this board is going to burn. Then I'll adjust the heat either higher or lower as needed as I work around the board and learn how it burns. It's always better to start with a lower heat than you'll ultimately need because you can always burn over and over until you get the desired darkness, but if you burn an area too much, there's really not much that you can do to lighten it up again. I used the universal point to burn the entire cheese board. This is the tip that you see on the pyrography tool in the video. I liked this tip for the type of burning that I was doing because I can get a nice clean line by using the straight edge of the tip, and I can also have great shading that I pull in from the edges by just turning the tool to an angle. This tip is very versatile because you don't have to change out different tips to be able to get large areas of wood covered and to get small details and small lines at the same time. Pyrography definitely takes a lot of patience. You need to work slowly and work in multiple layers if you want to have depth and color variation in your final product. This whole project took me well over 3 hours, and I couldn't do it all in one sitting either. If you're working on a pyrography project where you don't really need to have color variation or shading, then you can turn your heat up higher and work much faster because everything will just be a very dark brown color. This definitely has a great appearance for certain projects. Because it took me so long to burn this entire cheese board, I'm only going to show this video on doing the wine bottle and the wine glasses. That way you can see more in depth exactly what I did on this bottom corner. Thanks for watching this video on how to make a custom cheese board using Pyrography. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. And as always, like and subscribe to see more content.